Republicans perhaps running as one type of candidate and voting a different way when they get to Richmond. I would not make this argument about your opponent, but I can see how other Democrats might, about how they might say, to me, he presents himself, we've talked often, he's an old-time country doctor, he's focusing on constituent services, but has consistently opposed the Medicaid expansion, and I think that you could make that sort of argument about him. But have you had success in making that argument, in connecting the image that he presents himself in Prince William County
to the way that he...
Could you identify
who him we're talking about?
Delegate Anderson.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're...
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just my question is, I think that he is sort of the example of what Tom has mentioned there in that example. But have you had success in making that argument? You've mentioned people focusing on healthcare, but are you sort of able to draw that line and say, look, he may, you may know him as, Rich from Woodbridge, but in reality he's, voted a certain way in Richmond, or is it hard to draw that line when you go out on the door?
There's going to be two answers to that. The
Okay.
first one, people are like, I don't know who my legislator is.
Absolutely.
And, oh, he did what? And then the other one is, oh yeah, this is a common experience with Delegate Anderson. He says he's my friend, and I don't agree with his votes. Or he says he will do these things to help, our district and Virginia, because we don't, when we vote as legislators, we're not just voting to represent our district, it's for the impact of that bill or that policy that we'll have on the entire Commonwealth. Or, he will say, what can you do? You can't argue the vote, and this is what it is. So we do make that argument at the doorstep. We do say, yeah, but, but this is the fact. We'll show the vote on the bill, or we'll talk about it. Most people just want people that are honest. If you're going to vote against it, say that's what you're going to do. They want people that look like them at the table versus on the menu, and this year we're on the menu. And we have to make sure that we're at the table. We have to make sure that we make change. And I understand that governing is a lot different. I've been exposed to the legislature quite often, being an activist in my lifetime, and also working on different campaigns, volunteering, I should say, on various campaigns and engaging the legislature. I understand that there are, people call this word, dirty word, compromises that we have to make. But as long as it's for the positive impact and progress of Virginia, that's not a bad thing. And why can't Delegate Anderson do those? Why can't he make those decisions? And when we have difficult experiences like Charlottesville, we need leaders. We need leaders in the fight for Medicaid that are going to stand up against party and politics and put people before those votes, if you will. And I'm not sure what his answer is. I want to know, why aren't you going to do the right thing, and why haven't you done the right thing for people in your community?
Yeah, I mean, I in thinking back to when I've spoken with him really about Republican leadership in general, in the General Assembly, a lot of their argument about not accepting the Medicaid expansion is about uncertainty. I think a lot of times when I've asked them, they've said, well, we think that when there's a new president and a Republican Congress, the ACA is going to be repealed. Certainly that's on the table. Graham Cassidy is, perhaps one vote away. But do you expect that, if you make it to Richmond and the ACA remains in place, maybe this argument can change? Do you think that you can at least say, there's always other arguments not to do it, I suppose, but do you think that you can at least start to say, like, look, this is here to stay. Why are we missing out on this for people in Prince William and in Virginia more generally?
Well, we have the facts and the figures. We're losing, $73 million a year. That's the case. We have 400,000 uninsured Virginians. That's a fact. We have over 12,000 in Prince William. That's a fact. What other case can we argue other than we need to extend, expand, and give folks insurances? This is a human right, not a privilege. We need to make sure that they have access to health care, affordable health care. They need to live and thrive in our community, and that's it. I mean, I don't know what other...
I think the argument is that if Obamacare is not overturned by with the Republican Congress and President Trump, that another strong argument that we can make at this point and say, look, I think that's a really good question, actually.
I think it also helps that most of them privately know that Medicaid expansion makes sense. Like, you cannot get one of them privately to argue against this. It is terrible business. It's terrible for the economics of it. It's terrible from a moral standpoint. So many of them say that they want to get to yes. And so maybe the survival of the ACA this week, if it does in fact survive the reconciliation period, will be that excuse. The problem I have with that, as Hala mentioned, is moral leadership. I think people are just looking for politicians who are willing to stand up even before something is popular, not be scared of their conservative base, and be willing to do the right thing. This is why Ed Gillespie has failed this test over and over again. He knew the travel ban was terrible constitutionally and terrible for the Virginia economy in terms of travel, but he was too scared to stand up to Trump. He's done the same thing in terms of the rhetoric around Charlottesville. It doesn't do any good for a leader to concede privately that this is wrong.
Yeah.
Leadership is about being willing to step up publicly and do that. And I think these Republican legislators who like to think of themselves as moderate or pragmatic have had 8 years to step out and show a little bit of moral courage about putting their communities ahead of their fear of a primary, and they haven't done it. And I think that's why there's so much cynicism out there, and I think that's why we're likely to see a wave election this year, is that people say, we're sick of this game that you do. You go to Richmond, you pass extreme bills, knowing they're bad bills, but knowing that Terry McAuliffe will veto them, and then everybody leaves the session with nothing accomplished, right? You get to go home and show you voted for the right-wing stuff, and at the same time you haven't imposed it on the state because you knew it would get blocked. Well, what about actually forming a coalition to get something done on our schools, or affordability of higher education, or on the Medicaid expansion? We have lost ground economically because of this, this policy from the Republicans, and I think voters are sick of it. They want leaders who are willing to stand up and say, this is what's right. This is where I stand.
I come right from my community. I'm homegrown, if you will, if you'll allow me to say that, right from Prince William County, 36 years, a lifelong Virginian, and even being in the community, working in the community, or and doing my job and providing for my family, and then volunteering, this is exactly right. We don't want politics in our home. We want to provide everything we can to make sure that people live, thrive, provide for their families and working families, and be able to just enjoy their life. And we know that Delegate Anderson represents some of his constituents, but he doesn't represent constituents that look like me. And that's bothersome to me. You have to put politics and party aside when you're representing your community, and standing up as a leader doesn't come with a price tag.
Yeah.